What's one piece of advice or a tip that you would give to somebody who is an aspiring media seeker, someone new in the field who wants to become a little more media savvy?
Network. I truly believe everything that has happened in my career is from meeting others. It all began with me going to a Greater New York Dietetic Association meeting. That's when I never knew about becoming a spokesperson for the Academy. I didn't know about media the way now it's want to be a media dietitian. That didn't even exist. We just happened to become media dietitians. So network, because you just never know. And that's the problem in today's world. Too much of it's done behind. Go to meetings, reach out to people. Be open to hearing other people's advice, but network. I can't say enough about networking.
Well, hey there. Welcome to Media Savvy, the podcast that gives you a behind-the-scenes look at what it takes to get noticed by media and become the go-to expert that they keep coming back to. I'll be sitting down with successful writers, producers, and entrepreneurs to learn the tools and tactics they use to build their reputation and in turn boost their business. I'm your host, Bonnie Taub-Dix, and I've been working with top-tier media outlets for more than 30 years, anywhere from traditional print publications to online and social platforms. And I'm sharing my nutrition guidance without gimmicks. But you don't have to be a dietitian for this podcast to speak to you. Through my one-to-one conversations, you'll learn how to build a strategy to get your name in the news and establish yourself as an authority in your field, no matter what the industry. With Media Savvy, I'm on a mission to inspire, motivate, and empower you to have the confidence and tools you need to shine in the spotlight. Are you ready? Let's get Media Savvy. Well, welcome to another episode of the Media Savvy podcast. I am so excited to have my guest on today, Keri Gans. And Keri is a registered dietitian nutritionist, certified yoga teacher, and the author of The Small Change Diet. She's a Shape Magazine and Forbes Magazine advisory board member and a blogger for U.S. News and World Report, which we've both been doing together for maybe 12, 15 years. The Keri Report is her bi-monthly podcast and newsletter where she helps convey her no-nonsense and definitely fun approach to a healthy lifestyle. And you'll still get a taste of this. Keri is a sought-after nutrition expert and has conducted thousands of interviews worldwide. She lives with her husband and her four-legged son, who she sings to regularly. And Keri is a huge animal lover, TV binge watcher, and martini enthusiast. She is also my favorite roommate when we travel together for business, and I can hardly wait to chat with her because I know you're going to enjoy her company as much as I do. Keri, welcome to Media Savvy.
I'm so happy to be here, Bon. Yes, so excited.
All right, let's jump in. So you and I have seen the media landscape evolve dramatically over the years, and I know you remember those days when we were regulars on TV. What's the most significant change that you've noticed in how dietitians are featured in media today compared to the heyday of TV and magazines of traditional media?
First of all, when we say heyday, I'm like feeling, are we being dated here? Like you're making us feel old. Oh, I don't like it. Okay. So heyday.
No, we're not old. We're not old.
No, we're seasoned. It is funny though, because you know how you get these memories, and one of my memories came up today of when I did a TV thing for Willis Report, and I was remembering, the TV days. It was different. Now it seems TV is just for most of us, at least in the big city, not that common. And it's like social media has become the new big thing. And what we used to do day in and day out practically was TV, magazines. It was like, memories. I'm going to start to break down the song here, but it was different. It was different. It was so different. And it was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
It was really a lot of fun. I mean, even going to the green room before you're on and seeing who else was on the show that day and the makeup that they did and all, it was just a lot of fun. But what's interesting about today is it seems like to get on TV, especially if you're working with a brand, is that the brand has to pay the TV station and then they have to pay you. And it is so costly to be on TV, where we used to go on regularly. It didn't cost us anything. It was so much fun.
And it wasn't like we got paid for it, because we really didn't, unless we were doing it with a brand. But I did it way more without a brand, just being the expert, the nutrition expert. If you did a good job, if you were on a show once and you did a good job and they liked you, you were invited back. That's why I was saying the Willis Report. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I was on that show. And there's others like that where you just became a regular and people think you're getting paid, which you're not. You're just doing it because of the exposure and really the love of communication, of communicating good, sound nutrition advice.
And the other thing is that they let me often pick the topics. Like I remember when I was doing shows regularly for the Lifetime Network, they would send a car to pick me up with the driver, drive me in. What do you want to talk about next time you're on? I mean, that was really heavenly. It was so much fun. But you're right. Things are very different now, especially with social media and the competition, the dancing, pointing, all that kind of stuff. I would much rather be on a TV. I'd much
rather be on a TV when someone else is doing my hair and makeup and not also have to worry about that. It wasn't like the competition. It wasn't like how many likes are you going to get? How many followers are you going to get? You just went out there as an expert, because you knew your stuff and you could deliver it. And the anchor people, the host, they had you back, the producers, because of that. It's not because you can point and sing and dance and do what other crazy stuff people are doing in today's world.
Speaking of delivery, so as seasoned media dietitians, what do you think has been the key to maintaining that credibility and reliability with reporters so that they kept coming back to us? They still keep coming back to us. But what do you think is key? What are some of your ideas about that?
One of the most important things is being timely. I still, to this day, if a reporter reaches out, I respond immediately. Like my husband makes fun of me. Like, what are you doing? Like, why? And I'm like, because I'm their go-to and they know they can count on me. It's not like 24 hours later and I'm just getting back to them. All it is a little line. I'm in. Like, it's so quick. And then I respond when they want their deadline. Usually it's, I'm in. What's your deadline? If they didn't already tell me what it was. And I think that's part of it. It's being someone who is responsible. So when they reach out, you respond. When they reach out again, you respond. And it was that way when back in the day when we were getting all the message and the talking points, it was communication. It was being able to communicate with others. That was so important.
I agree with you 100%. And there are some reporters where I literally drop everything and I even answer their query right away.
Yes.
But you're talking about reliability. And I think that is key. In fact, when I teach people who come to me for my media training course, I tell them, don't even meet the reporter's deadline. Ask when the reporter deadline is and beat it. Because if you're late to the deadline, or even sometimes on time, if they have their story already, they'll use the other people that they got.
The truth is, right.
But I think that
the truth is, I was going to say, whoever gets the information in first is usually, except now I have some reporters I know no matter what are waiting for my response. So it's different, but especially at the beginning, you want to get that in early, because if they reached out to 3-4 people and somebody got everything they needed right away, those person's quotes are going to get in more than yours.
Yep. And what I was going to say is you talked originally about reliability, but once you have the credibility with this reporter, then they'll keep coming back to you over and over and over again because they know they're going to get their responses. And also I know that you and I love talking on the phone and I'd much rather talk on the phone to a reporter, but that's not what they want because they want us to write our answers because they know they're also going to get something that they could just copy and paste into their story. It has sound bites already in there.
That's important too. It's not giving them a novel. I don't give novels. I question asked, I answer. I don't go on and on and on and on. They don't want that. It's just, they don't. They want get to the point.
Although we know we're very capable. We're capable of going on and on and on, but we don't exactly right. Concise. That's
we do it
important.
with each other, but we know what they're looking for. And the other thing is sometimes a couple of things happen. I'm not the one for the interview. I'm like, no, not. I mean, and these are my tried and true people who have reached out for me, and I'm like, oh, this is not a topic that I'm going. This is too complicated for me. You need to reach out to who I consider another registered dietitian who is an expert in that. So knowing when it's also not in your lane at all. Like, I mean, it's not to say I won't research things I don't know. That's different. I will research things I don't know that's in my lane. But if it's completely out of my lane, like, you know, if we're starting to get into training for races, I mean, I can think of sports nutritionists way better than myself to respond on that. And I will give their name, their email information. I will give that to the reporter. And trust me, the reporter still comes back to me, but I've given them what they wanted when they asked for it.
Yeah, it's important to be a resource. And, you know, there are times when I've gotten stories from reporters like, I'm looking for 5 foods that bust belly fat. And I'll tell the reporter, you know, I'm not going to do that, but could I write you something for your intro? Or could I give you a good ending to your story? And sometimes they like that also, because I don't like being a part of this fad kind of story, but I do want to contribute. And I also want to maintain a relationship with this reporter. So sometimes they even like that you're, and I love being an intro.
And sometimes I specifically decline. It's not, you know, if it's, you know, if I have to promote keto, I'll be like, this is what I think. Right. But if you really want someone who's going to give you this, because sometimes they're looking for, they know their end game a lot of times. They know what they want to say, and they just want to get it from you. I'm not going to give it to them because I'm a nutrition expert. And that's also being able to go out there and speak on science, and not just because a reporter's asking that we're going to give them hogwash. You know, let somebody else do that. I'm not going to do that because I have my credibility.
I agree. That hogwash may be up there with heyday. Okay, so tell me, so how do you prepare for an interview for an online publication? Because we're used to preparing for TV interviews. That could take days for a 3-minute segment. Same thing with magazine. But are there any tricks that you have to share? Like, what do you do? That
you say days. Your days. Okay. I unfortunately maybe should be days. Sometimes I am not, which going back, like maybe I should have prepared a little bit more. I'm surprised they had me back. But how do I do? What do I do? I mean, if it's some topics, honestly, I can talk about in my sleep. All right, I've done it over and over again, and I literally do nothing. I respond, and that is it. Then there are others that I need to research, and research is not just any old research. I will go to find studies to back it up. And I've never considered myself a big study person per se. But I do believe in the study. Bonnie, you're laughing. You're like, yeah, well, the two of us in research. All right. We're not conducting any ourselves, but we look for it to support what we're saying. And I will literally, and sometimes I've been known, shockingly to myself, I give out links to studies to reporters because this is what I'm saying. And I want you to know it is backed up. So research, I go to PubMed. I also will say I will Google something. And the best is, I'm sure this has happened to you a zillion times. Let's say I'm Googling, I can't even think of it, but something. And then who comes up but my name?
I know what you're going to say.
I come up, and I'm like, oh, I can't believe I'm researching this again. Maybe I should just use my quote. It is my quote. I said it before, but I will look to see other articles that were written on a topic and look to see who it quoted. Because if it's not an RD that I personally respect and a publication that perhaps I also respect, a lot of times there's just information out there that if I then just use that, I will be keeping things going that make no sense, which happens all the time, which we know. So I don't want to help spread false information. So yes, I will Google, and sometimes it's me, sometimes it's Bonnie. Sometimes I love when it's you and me in the same article. I'm like, yay. But, yeah. So it's a lot of Googling and researching in PubMed, like I said, and through science publications. And, yeah, that's really, and sometimes it's nothing because we know it. We've spoken about it a zillion times.
Do you ever use AI?
No. It's so funny. I was just saying to my husband this morning, I don't get AI. He's like, Keri, you understand AI. I'm like, oh, maybe not. I don't know, but I've never used it. I know a lot of people are. I have not used it. My words are still my words. My sound bites are still my sound bites. I mean, maybe that's sometimes to my detriment. I mean, we can have a whole conversation of why using someone to do my social and your social never really worked, because I have my own voice. So it's kind of the same when a reporter comes to me. They're coming to me, most of them, because they've worked with me over and over and they know my voice.
Yeah, I think that, those kinds of messages that really promote authenticity and what you genuinely believe really help you to come across as being sincere. And this is why reporters keep coming back to us, because they know that we will give them our opinions, but that our opinions are based upon science. We're not making things up. And I'm always surprised when like a reporter will contact me about a story and then I will Google the story, the idea to see what else is out there. And sometimes the exact stuff is already out there. They're just like rehashing it for their publication. And I think that that's also an important message for a lot of people who are intimidated about not getting themselves out there. They're afraid that stories have been done before. And yeah, just about everything we do has been done before, including things that we're even asked to do that we've done before. But why should that hold you back?
Sometimes a reporter will reach out to me on something and I'll be like, well, I've spoken about that like 5 years ago, but happy to do it again. Even in my own podcast, I'm like, I can't believe that I'm actually being asked to talk about this again when I reported on it so long ago. But that's also being part of what we do, is being on the top of trends. And a lot of that, I will say, comes from being in constant contact with journalists who have reached out. I wasn't Googling the trends, to be honest with you, I admit, but they are, and they're coming to me. And now I know a lot of the trends for that reason. And then I've researched it and I've learned about it.
What's funny is that sometimes I'll get a Google alert with my name and my book in there for a story that I didn't even do.
Oh my God.
And then I see that it's just a different publication that took a piece from a story that I did. And they usually work out fine, but sometimes they are just really off the charts. Like, why did they do this?
There was something today that I got, and it was on some weird herb. And I looked at the original article was from 2021. 2021, and Yahoo Canada or something like that was using it. I don't even understand. Or how about when they use it? This is the best. But it's from a foreign country and your name is weird, or like instead of saying the author of the Small Change Diet, it's some crazy name of the diet of my book. And I'm like, really? It's actually humorous, but yeah, it can be used. That's the other thing. It can be used. Because once a quote is out there, and as long as you're quoted, it can be used anywhere.
Yeah. And I think that you and I both know to abide by nothing is off the record. And I have had so many reporters say to me, oh, listen, this is off the record, but could you tell me about XYZ or whatever it is? And I once actually got in trouble for that. Because that's when we were spokespeople for the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And a reporter asked me, off the record, my kids always eat sugary breakfast cereals. What do your kids eat? And then I said, okay, here's the trick. I mix half a cup yellow box cereal with half a cup of whatever they like. And then it cuts the sugar in half. Well, don't you know, of course they put yellow box Cheerios in the story, but okay, at least it was a good quote. It could have been something, personal that they put in there. But you just have to know that.
And isn't that funny when you say when you were a spokesperson, there are quotes that are still, and I'm quoted as a spokesperson. I mean, I don't even remember how many years ago now that we were spokespeople, but there will be a quote that was used from way back. And there it is.
Well, that's why you have to be so careful about what you say and just know that you mean what you say and that you're not going to change your mind tomorrow. And this is why jumping on fads could be a problem, because it can be used over and over again. And this is something that could live on forever. But I do think
certain things change a little. Like I mean, if I could rewrite my book right now, even though I've always felt like my book is about small changes, it's what I believe in. There's nothing else to say. I'm not going to big changes. Okay. But certain things that I said, back in, 2010, I think it was when the book was originally written, or 11, whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm like, well, I've changed a little bit. The science has changed, I'm like keeping up with the science. And I know, I mean, my God, with your book, how many times, with not how many times, I'm not going to make it plural, but changes that have occurred and probably will continue to occur, that we do need to sometimes change what we originally said. And it's okay.
Absolutely. And, yeah, right now I'm in the throes of my third edition of my book, Read It Before You Eat It, because so much has changed about labeling.
Yes.
And I have to change it, because if I don't change it, then my book is really out of date. So it is something that I have to keep up with. So stay tuned for that release. All right. So we both know the thrill of getting those big TV interviews and magazine interviews, but do you have a favorite behind the scenes story of one of your TV appearances?
Well, my favorite was, and it's different, because my favorite was when I got flown to Costa Rica and I did a media tour in Costa Rica with my own translator. She was with me the entire time. Everyone was speaking Spanish. I was on camera and everything was, you would think they would be speaking English. I mean, I don't know why, I just assumed, but they didn't. And it was just such an amazing trip to have this person with you all the time. It's like I had a whole entourage with me the whole time. And the funniest is when they did my hair and makeup. I swear my eyelashes were, I mean, the biggest eyelashes I've ever seen, but it didn't matter. I was in Costa Rica and just feeling so amazing. So that's not a typical, I mean, I have other stories of in the US, but that just overall will go down as like my favorite. Being flown to Costa Rica for a brand, and it was a brand in Costa Rica. And when they first contacted me, I thought it was a joke. So that's the other thing. Always respond, you never know. Like if I had been like, I could have thought it was spam, but it wasn't. It was an amazing opportunity in Costa Rica.
That sounds like such fun. I know we have so many of those kinds of stories to share. One of my funny stories is that I was doing something for California avocados for Cinco de Mayo. And I really wanted to bring this big, beautiful basket. I had to go shopping for this big basket so I could put all these avocados in that they shipped to me. And I got this gorgeous liner for the basket and I filled it with the avocados and I schlepped this into the city. And then don't you know, when I go to the studio, they wanted just a headshot, so it never was my whole body with the avocados with the whole setup there. So after that, I didn't want to carry them home. So everybody in the studio was really happy that I gave out avocados after that. But I remember that. It was really disappointing. But anyway.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's talk about some fun stuff. So what's the most unusual or unexpected question that you have gotten asked during an interview?
I was trying to think about this because you did give me questions ahead of time. And I was like, God, I don't really have anything. So I have nothing unusual. What I have is when you're caught off guard. And it wasn't unusual. Like I should know the answer. I was on a show once and they didn't tell me they were going to show me this big thing of a glass jar with sugar in it. And they didn't say, they were going to say, Keri, how many tablespoons of sugar is this? Like, why would I know that? So I said something totally ridiculous. But I said it with confidence. So nobody questioned it. All right. It didn't really matter. I mean, that's the funny. I have more funnies of that, like things that I said that really made no sense. And yet, if you say it with confidence, people believe what you're saying. And the only one that really knew I made no sense was my mother. Okay. So when I call her from the car, what did you think of the segment? She's like, well, Keri, what you said made absolutely no sense. Thank you, Mom. But yeah, we know your mother would never have said that. But yeah, I mean,
no, my mother would never.
It was more about the things that came out of my mouth. And I think it wasn't as much of the questions. I know people get asked weird, but I never really, it was just unexpected. The sugar thing was just more unexpected, but otherwise, no, not really weird questions.
Yeah, I know. And of course, we know we have to pivot, well, I can't really tell you that, but here's what I can tell you. But one time I was doing a satellite media tour for a brand, and the reporter just all of a sudden out of the blue said to me, okay, so tell me what you think of the keto diet. And you know what satellite media tours are, where you only have, 2-3 minutes to talk about exactly what you're being paid for. So the first thing I thought of was, you know what? Call me and we can talk about it. And that was what I did. And then it just like shut him up. He didn't say anything else.
Oh,
but yeah,
that's
those
funny.
questions from the rogue reporters.
That reminds me of an SMT that I did once. And the reporter said to me, "What are you wearing? I love your dress." Like, I'm sorry, we don't have time to start talking about what I'm wearing, even though I would have loved to talk fashion and have switched totally, gears there. But I don't remember. I don't even remember what I said. I just remember being like, first of all, I wasn't going to give the brand because I'm whatever. It was all so complicated. I was like, thank you. And we moved on.
Yes, that's the best way to do it. But when it comes to your personal life, your fashion, it's not always easy to juggle family life with the media career, especially as you mentioned, your husband saying, "What are you doing now?" I get that all the time. So what are some of your go-to strategies for maintaining balance and trying to avoid burnout? What do you do?
Well, it's important, I think, to always have things you love outside of the job. And they don't necessarily have to include your spouse. I mean, they would obviously be happy, or partner if it does, but it doesn't have to. I've always been a believer of self-care. And for me, that has always been yoga. So as long as I could get my yoga practice in, I have a long list. As long as I get my yoga practice in, I've always was happy. And as long as I could spend time walking my dog, which is always been so important to me. And now I have pickleball, which is also now very important to me. I think it's finding things also that you like and realizing that the rest of it, I mean, personal life, as you and I have discussed many times. I mean, I'm not going to 20 years from now, wish I did another TV interview. No. Am I going to wish? And I don't have to because I'm doing it. Spend more time with my grandchildren? Yes. Because that's important to me. And I think balance changes. 10, 15 years ago, that wouldn't have been important to me. They didn't exist. So things were different. I mean, balance then was probably more about doing yoga or going out for dinner with friends and spending some time that way. Now it's a little more focused on family time. And I think that that's shifted. And I think what we all need to do or realize is that life, we are going to have shifts, and it's important to kind of go with it because, you're not going to be good at your job, I feel, if you're burnt out. So you need to find those other things that can make you happy and being reasonable. I mean, I'm not saying, we all need to make money. So I'm not saying as much as I would like right now to probably just play pickleball and do yoga and walk Cooper. Oh, and play with my grandchildren. And spend time with my husband. Anyway, I'm still
a long list.
I'm still working, and I get that. But the question is how to do it and not burn out. And I think it is to realize that you still need to do other things, and little things can make the difference. And that to me was always my yoga practice.
I think what you said is that balance changes. And I think that that's really important. And I mean, for some people, they could rely on something constant throughout their lives, like you, maybe yoga. But yeah, things do change. And I think that the reason why I asked you this question is because media is 24/7. So there's always some sort of show on or a reporter who's up at 3 a.m. and wants questions answered from you. And I think that as much as we talked about being reliable and answering right away, I think that we need to know that we have to balance our lives where it's not all about media. Right. It's trying to balance it with other things that we're doing.
And sometimes it's okay to say no. No. All right. I mean, it's hard when you're starting out to say no. I get it. It depends what your goals are. If you want to work with the media at the beginning, it's hard to say no because if you say no, they're moving on to somebody else. And today, I think you and I, we have our reporters. So we have a constant there with the journalists that we work with. That's not going to change. So we're still going to get quoted in women's health, prevention, yada, yada. None of that's changing. If I got a TV opportunity tomorrow, I would have to think for a moment. Like the old me would have jumped on it immediately. And then the new me, I mean, as much as I love TV, but I'd have to see if it really fits. Like what I'd have to give up to do it. It might not be worth it. But maybe but I do love it. But I don't know. I think I'm starting to love other things more.
I think that also what you're describing is that sometimes you might change your mind from one day to another.
Oh.
You know, it might be something that you're more interested in doing as opposed to something where, nah, not today.
I changed my mind on I don't even know how. Today I woke up. Okay. I'm doing Bonnie's podcast. I still haven't shared my last podcast that I did. That's been live for, I don't know, almost 2 weeks. And I said to myself, all right, Keri, today's the day. You're doing a video. You're going to share it. I did the video and I still haven't shared it because I changed my mind and I don't know. I just didn't end up doing it. But that's, I guess, the luxury right now is that I can, but it's ever changing, I think is the answer there. Constantly our lives, how we work with the media landscape, which we started this whole conversation, totally changed or continuing to change. But I also like to think the same way in our lives, there are certain constants that will always be there.
Yeah. I had to answer a question for a reporter about a morning routine. And, one of the things that I said is that before I get out of bed, I really try to think of one thing that I like to accomplish that day because I know that, we have these big to-do lists and okay, I might pick something small. Okay. It doesn't have to be like I'm going to write a book today, but just something small, just so that I know I could do it because sometimes I'll even put something on my to-do list that I know I'm pretty much done with.
Right. But do you do it? When you say that to yourself, do you actually do it?
I really try to. Try to because I used to have these long to-do lists and then it would be like, I'd look at the list. It's like, wow, that's a great idea. I really should do that. I forgot to even put that on my list. Nah, not today. And it would just bother me that I would look at these lists. Like if it was not on my phone and it was a piece of paper, I probably would have to dust it off. But I really try to do things that are really important to do that have to be done and not things that could wait. Cause then I don't want to wake up and feel like I have to pressure myself to do things that don't really need to be done.
I think that's also the difference. Like I will always get back to a reporter, but posting on social, I'm like, that can wait. I don't know why. For me, we're completely different from many registered dietitians. Their first thing that they would do no matter what is post on social. Mine is I'm going to respond to that reporter. There's always other work related things that are non-social that take priority for me. It's just the way it is. Social is really dropped where it used to be higher, but it has dropped.
Well, this is something that you and I talk about all the time, being like the OGs of media. I don't even know if I like that expression, OG, but someone said to me, oh, you're an OG of media. It's like, really? And the first time I heard it, I had to go look it up. Like, is that a good thing or not a good thing? But I think that, we are used to communicating in a different way. And as you said, you could go on TV and have these random people call you, I saw you on TV in the gym today. That was great, whatever. But not having to wait for likes and comments in your feed, it was so much less pressure. Even though doing a TV episode was pressure, it was so much less pressure, I think, because the competition that you had was for yourself. There weren't that many people doing what we did.
It was more about it was also just to feel good for ourselves. And I think social, others will disagree. And because they love social, but I love the interviews. I love the communication with people. And I guess people can argue they can do live Instagram stuff. They can do a lot of this live and get instant feedback, but that's not the kind of feedback I love. All right. And I'm not looking for that. I'm not looking for the pat on the back. I'm looking to do a good job. I know what I do is I do it well. And I'm not looking for the outside audience to tell me that. And I think that's, a lot of what social is about for some, not everyone. I don't want anyone. I'm going to get haters, but I think for some, it's about that pat on the back. And I feel I can give it to myself.
Well, I think that when reporters keep coming back to us, then that shows that we have credibility. We've already built our reputation and it helps to boost our business. For those who are just starting out, so if you're on social media and you don't have those reporters coming to you, then that will hopefully, boost your business. I don't know, but it might help to build your reputation and make you feel credible and make you 100%. Feel good about yourself.
So and I think starting out, I'm glad I'm not starting out right now. I always said, I'm glad I'm not starting. Well, I always go back even further. I'm like, I'm glad I wasn't single when there were cell phones and texting. Okay. That's a whole nother conversation. But also,
oh, that would be a podcast.
Things that we're glad weren't around when we were single and younger. No, I didn't want to say, the other word. But yeah, I mean, everything is different. And I think when you're younger, it's something you've grown up with. You're used to. I mean, people have been doing social since they were in college, high school. It's a completely different world. They don't know from what we know from. And I don't, again, want to make us sound, I mean, we are seasoned. That's a good word. I just feel like, yes, times have changed, but I think for those of us with credibility, sometimes it's a matter of just sticking to your guns. And knowing what you do well, and that the landscape's always changing. I mean, we never saw Instagram coming. You and I were Miss Twitters. I mean, we thought Twitter was like, remember, we gave a lecture at the Fancy on Twitter as the experts, and we were doing amazing.
That is so funny. That is
and
so
now
funny.
I don't even post on Twitter.
What my audience doesn't know is that Keri and I did a presentation at the Food and Nutrition Conference and Expo how long ago was that? Do you know? Years ago. And the topic was so revolutionary. It was called Let's Get Social. And we talked about how to post on Twitter. And right. Oh my gosh, it is so funny. When I think about us practicing in our room, like I laugh thinking about that. I should really look for those slides.
Remember, talk about things that happen. Remember my tag? My censor tag was on my dress. I'm like, Bonnie, I need your help with the zipper. And there on the side was my censor tag. Okay. It was not removed from the store. And I didn't want to wear a jacket over it, but I had to because of the censor tag. Anyway. Yes. I'm remembering the outfit.
I do remember
the
that.
outfit faux pas. Anywho.
That is so funny. Well, speaking of influencers, which I'm putting in the air quotes, how do you keep your content fresh? Like where do you get your ideas from?
I mean, I will admit it's hard for me to keep it fresh, being honest. I mean, again, if we mean fresh on social, then I'm going to say I'm not really keeping it fresh on social because I share my podcast. I share some other personal things, maybe my dog, maybe my grandchildren. I'm not really being as constant and fresh as I should be on social. And should be, I'm going to also on that same breath say should, why, I'm not sure, what am I looking for, blah, blah, blah. So basically, it's more about me keeping fresh in when people ask me for things that I still am a resource. So even if I am not familiar with it, I never say no because that's how I learn. I'm constantly keeping up on every diet. And also I will say with my podcast. So I get ideas from reporters who interview me. And then I get from those interviews, I get ideas for podcasts. And that's what I have to keep fresh is more or less my podcast and my newsletter. But other than that, the rest of it just comes from being present. I think it's like being like aware and not closing off and saying, I don't know. And that's why interviews are, even though we don't get paid for these, but it's learning. And I'm always learning when I have to research for an interview on some new topic I've never heard of.
Well, I think that, being fresh, being relevant doesn't have to be social media. I think that's what a lot of younger people don't understand, whether it's doing our podcasts or a newsletter or something like that, or basically, interviews. I know that for me, I probably find most of that pressure coming from interviews. But, so being relevant does not have to be for social media. I feel like that's really an important point to highlight, especially for those people who are listening who really don't want to do a lot of social media. And I know that sounds like crazy for this day and age, but it really is not something that you have to do. You could have a voice someplace else. And maybe social media doesn't have to be dancing on Instagram. Right. Maybe instead it's LinkedIn. Maybe it's something that's a little more serious.
Yeah. I mean,
I write a letter to the editor of a magazine.
Right. I always say that's one place that I've always let fall by the wayside, and I don't know why, and it's LinkedIn. Every once in a while I go on and I'm like, why do you not do more on LinkedIn? Because it's a different type of platform and I really like it because it's different. But That's on my to-do list. Go on to LinkedIn. And then it gets pushed to the bottom.
I've already checked that one off.
Look at you. You're ahead of the game.
So ahead of the game. But I do enjoy it. But I think LinkedIn has become a little bit more like Facebook in some respects. I think that sometimes it's a little TMI with some people, but I don't know. Maybe that was a goal. Anyway, if you had to choose one of your favorite media moments in your career, what would it be and why? And the second part of that question is, do you have a dream media opportunity that you haven't done yet, kind of like a bucket list opportunity?
All right.
Or have you already gone there?
I think one of my best, which I recently already mentioned, was the Costa Rica trip. That was just incredible. And otherwise, my favorite, I mean, maybe it was when I did the Bethany show. Remember Bethany had a show, and only because I knew my children were so excited. Like, they don't care about Good Morning America. They didn't care about any of the other shows I was on. No, they didn't care. But when I was on Bethany, they were like, oh my God. So I would say that was one of the ones that made me the happiest, only because my children got the biggest kick out of it. And yes, and an interview when I was asked by Elle magazine, my skincare routine. My daughter loved that one more than anything. That was an interview she could tell all her friends. It was more about skincare than nutrition, but nonetheless, and I totally get it. Those were really amazing. And what lies ahead to be my favorite? I feel like I never had a bucket list. Everything I have done in my career wasn't on a bucket list. It wasn't like, oh, I want to be on Good Morning America. Or, oh, I want to write a book, or I want to be on, radio all the time. None of that. I've never had a bucket. I've just always been open to doors opening around me. And that's how, so I don't know what lies ahead. That could be the next most exciting thing that I'll be like, oh my God, this was the best ever. I don't know. I'm just expecting that something else will be around the corner.
Isn't that wonderful? I love that. And I agree with you. I think I have already exceeded any expectation I may have had, because I had no expectations to even work with media. So I've already exceeded them. So I agree. Anything else is just exciting. It's just a bonus.
I always say I've been on all the TV, the morning shows, the evening shows, I've done it. All the magazines, so whatever else comes at this point in the media world, it's a bonus. And hopefully I'll be ready for it.
And it's funny. You will for sure. Otherwise call me. We could strategize. But it's funny you talk about, what your kids like. I remember that there was a sports reporter that for some reason kept calling me for stories for Insider about like these football players and weightlifters and celebrities, Chris Hemsworth, his workout routine. And I didn't know these people, but it seemed like, and my son calls me, football? Are you kidding me? You don't know anything about football and you're commenting. But they asked me about like Tom Brady's smoothie. I could comment on that. I don't have to know him to do that.
Right. Like I just got questioned about because Taylor Swift ate a bug on stage and I got interviewed by Vogue on what do I think about eating bugs. I was so excited to tell my 9-year-old granddaughter who, thinks Taylor Swift is the best thing that's ever walked the earth. I'm like, look, grandma's quoted on an article about Taylor Swift. She wasn't as excited as I thought she would be though, but.
Wait, did she eat the bug on purpose?
Flew into her mouth and she swallowed. Third time it happened.
Oh my gosh. That happened to me once in Spain. And I was taking a picture. Actually, my son was taking a picture of me when it happened. And they still talk about it. It was not a good scene. All right. Yes. So Keri, I have 2 questions to ask you that I ask all my guests. And one is I would like to know, looking back on your journey in the media landscape, which we heard today was lots of fun, what's one piece of advice that you wish you received when you started?
Oh, I probably should have practiced more, but then I feel if I practice more, this is different. So my spokesperson work, I always practiced. Media, like live TV, I didn't as much. I've always been more of a wing it. And luckily it worked out. I mean, it totally did. But I think there's something to be said about practice. There really is. And I probably, I don't know if I would have listened to that advice because I'd be like, I can wing it. And, but yeah, I probably should have practiced a little bit more.
For sure. And my second question is, what's one piece of advice or a tip that you would give to somebody who is an aspiring media seeker, someone new in the field who wants to become a little more media savvy?
Network. I truly believe everything that has happened in my career is from meeting others. It all began with me going to a Greater New York Dietetic Association meeting. That's when I never knew about becoming a spokesperson for the academy. I didn't know about media the way now it's, want to be a media dietitian. That didn't even exist. We just happened to become media dietitians. So network, because you just never know. And that's the problem in today's world. Too much of it's done behind. Go to meetings, reach out to people. Be open to hearing other people's advice, but network. I can't say enough about networking.
I agree with you 100%. And I think that with today's world, it's more about texting and email and that kind of communication as opposed to seeing someone face to face.
Meet for coffee.
In fact, sometimes
if you have a mentor, or somebody, reach out. Like there hasn't been, I'm sure, I know for you for sure, when people have reached out to me, young dietitians who just want to talk to me about my career path, I'm like, I immediately say yes. I talk to them on the phone and I'm like, you're amazing. You're amazing because you reached out. You're already starting to network and you're only in college for a lot of them. They're just thinking about when they graduate. And I'm like, wow, kudos to you for not just sitting back and waiting, but going out there and being proactive in your career. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, that's great advice. Great advice. Well, Keri, I loved having you on the show today. I am sure that we will talk again soon.
It's coming to an end.
About all of our other things.
We need a plane ride.
Yes, we need a plane ride. Which we'll have soon. Tell me, please tell my audience where they could find you. And this will be in the show notes also, by the way. Of course, I do show notes and you'll have your book in there and your social platforms. But what is your favorite place?
Go to my website. Everything is there. KeriGansNY.com. Even though now that I live in New Jersey, I think I need to change it, but that's whatever. But KeriGansNY.com. You can find every way to follow me, which is basically, as I said, Insta, which whatever. And listen. And then you can also subscribe to my podcast, The Keri Report.
The Keri Report. Yep. It's great. It's great.
Yes,
no nonsense.
You've been a guest on
advice,
it.
And I love it.
Great. So yes, your listeners will have to take a listen as well.
I think the hardest part about being each other's guests is sticking to the topic.
We did it. I think we did it. We did it.
We did it.
I'm so proud of
it.
I'm so proud of it.
We did it. I'm very proud. Yes, I just said the same thing exactly. Okay. Well, that is a wrap for today's episode of Media Savvy, and a big thanks to Keri Gans for schmoozing with us and taking us along her media journey. And if you've enjoyed today's episode as much as we did, please subscribe to the show, write a review, and I would love it if you would tell your friends about this show. And if you'd like to see our shows instead of just listening to us, you could also find us on YouTube. So be sure to tune in next time. And until then, you could follow me on Instagram at BTD Media for insider tips and tricks. And don't be shy. Throw me a message if you have any questions. And by the way, you are looking mighty media savvy today. And I'm Bonnie saying goodbye for now and see you in the spotlight.